Have you heard? Sea City is safe now, and there's a new city lord. If we go back now, we will be occupying a cave abode for free. It's fine if you say such things. Sea City has been occupied by the devils. How is it possible to chase the devils away? I think it's better not to go there. It's too dangerous there. But I see that many people have already arrived at Sea City. Moreover, I heard that there are abundant resources there. There are 2 big rivers beside it. That place is rich. If we can rush over now, we might be able to become rich there in the future. Many people in the catacombs were discussing. They had more or less heard such news. Although many people were still puzzled, there were also many people who had already rushed to Sea City. Moreover, Li Yuanqing had directly transferred many people from Ping City to help Yichilua as she did not have any helpers. The lockdown of the array formation in Rong City would take a month. He could not transfer anyone from there, so he could only think of other ways. Yichilua was glad that she had Li Yuanqing's full help. In addition, he had sent people to publicize it. Now, there are many residents in Sea City. The situation of these itinerant cultivators outside was originally very worrying. Now, they could have a cave abode in Sea City. In addition, there were many other resources. They had even given out many things. Those who came early had all obtained spirit stones. This was a real benefit. Everything went so smoothly, and the progress was all right. However, after Li Yuanqing handed this responsibility to Yichilua that day and gave her some things, he left. These people who came to help came later. However, Yichilua was still a little lonely. She thought that young Master Li would stay here forever, but he left again. Yichilua, who was no longer bound, had made many changes in Sea City. She had borrowed all the resources from Ping City. Originally, Li Yuanqing wanted to treat these resources as funding from Ping City and not return them. However, Yichilua insisted on treating them as borrowed resources and had even written a contract. Hujuju did not take these words seriously. She had been guarding Li Yuanqing for the past 2 days and reporting the recent situation to him. Recently, Ping City hasn't been threatened. Everything is going very smoothly. From the looks of it, there won't be any other dangers in the short term. Moreover, we've also established a very mature defensive array that is completely managed by Little Man. The aura of the man-eating vine had changed a lot after not seeing her for a long time. She used to be like a little sister, but now, she looked like a big sister and spoke much less. Master, during the time you were gone, I've strengthened the defensive array formation of Ping City again. It's more than 30% stronger than before. Moreover, there's still room for improvement. If I can find enough materials in the future, I'll continue to improve it. The man-eating vine had Hujuju as her backer and a sufficient supply of materials. In addition, Li Yuanqing had provided her with the array formation books to practice. In just a few months, her attainments in array formations had already reached a new level. Now, not only could she produce some outstanding large array formations, but she could even modify them herself. Many array formations were designed according to the materials at that time. In the current situation, there would naturally be many deviations. It would be troublesome if she did not modify it. Its power might be much weaker. Little Man had discovered these problems through many practices. That was why she was confident that she could do some repairs. Li Yuanqing was still very satisfied with their management in Ping City. That little fellow had endured the pressure. Originally, there were still many people in Ping City who were very dissatisfied with Hujuju, the city lord who is a demon. However, after this period of time, these dissatisfied voices gradually disappeared. Master, Sea City is vast. Since Sister Yi is already in charge of it, shouldn't we establish more communication between us? We can build a few teleportation arrays among them. It will naturally be more convenient to travel. It's fine. You can send Little Man to discuss this with City Lord Yi. Sister Yi is alone there. The pressure is a little high. Why don't we let Little Man go to Sea City for a period of time and help her perfect the array formation in Sea City? Didn't Master only build a general structure? Isn't there still a lot of details? Li Yuanqing was flipping through the books on weapon refinement, looking for a way to refine the huge devil crystal in his hand and make it into something useful. When he heard Hujuju's words, he looked up at her. Why? You seem to be quite close to City Lord Yi. Master, how can you say that? Isn't it because you have a good relationship with Sister Yi that Sister Yi is so kind? Hu Juzhou covered her mouth and chuckled. She did not say anything. Li Yuanqing waved his hand and casually said, "If little man is willing, let her stay there for a while. It's fine, but don't delay your usual work. The things here are the most important. Do you understand? Don't worry, master. I've already arranged Ping City properly. I was just worried that I would have nothing to do during this period of time. Sea City is big enough. I already have some ideas. When the time comes, I'll find a chance to operate it well. I hope to make it a little different." The two of you premeditated this? What premeditation? Sister Yi is struggling to support that empty city alone. She still has to spend all her effort to gather everyone. How troublesome would that be? I'm just asking little man to go over and help Sister Yi resolve some trouble. When Li Yuanqing heard this, his mood gradually changed. He did not say anything else and casually sent the two of them away. Little man was becoming more and more united with Hu Juzhou. He had not been back for a while, but the two of them were like wearing the same pants. They supported each other. But this was not a big deal. There was indeed a lot of trouble in Sea City. It was a good thing to let the man-eating vine help perfect the array formation. Li Yuanqing, on the other hand, was in trouble now. He wanted to refine the devil crystal into a rod-shaped weapon. At that time, he would find some materials in the books that could match the devil artifact. With these materials, he would be able to use his human body to drive this devilish aura. It was an alternative technique, but many of the materials were quite rare. Even he did not have them. It would probably be troublesome to obtain them. Li Yuanqing called Zhao Tian over. Zhao Tian was now one of the top figures in the city and was Li Yuanqing's manager. Moreover, their small shop was already very popular, and they had even opened an auction house. With the rare materials that Li Yuanqing had obtained, he completely turned this shop into the largest trading company in Ping City. His subordinates covered many aspects. It could be said that they were all involved in anything related to the people in Ping City. Moreover, he had made the decision to change their original title to Yuanqing Pavilion. After Li Yuanqing returned, he had not told Zhao Tian, so he had not come to visit yet. Today, he finally received a summons from his young master. He woke up early to tidy up. When it was about time, he carefully rushed to Li Yuanqing's small courtyard. The current Zhao Tian had a very different aura from before. He already looked like a big boss. He was wearing silk and satin, and the gold and jade threads were refined from precious materials. The treasures on his hands were all top-grade treasures. Just that top-grade storage ring alone could accommodate a few rooms of treasures. This was completely different from when he was on a patrol team. This was shopkeeper Zhao. Zhao Tian carefully pushed open the door and walked in. He happened to see Li Yuanqing counting the materials in the courtyard and hurriedly ran over. "Young Master Li, when did you come back? Why didn't you inform me in advance? I've missed you so much recently." Li Yuanqing took a sip of tea and sized him up. He smiled and teased, "Shopkeeper Zhao is now a famous figure in Ping City. How would I dare to inform you in advance?" Zhao Tian looked at Li Yuanqing awkwardly and said, "Young Master Li, those are just empty titles. Don't you know what our relationship is? You're the real big boss. I'm just a small shopkeeper. I'm just trying to keep up the shop's reputation. It's a little exaggerated now. If you don't like it, I'll change it tomorrow." Li Yuanqing waved his hand. Zhao Tian had not forgotten his original intention. Although he had become stronger now, he knew Li Yuanqing's strength very well. All of this was given to him by Li Yuanqing. Moreover, the materials on Li Yuanqing's body were not something ordinary people could compare to. What kind of power was behind him that could support such a person? Even though Zhao Tian was already very knowledgeable, he had never heard of such a powerful organization. He admired Li Yuanqing from the bottom of his heart. Therefore, he had been standing here for a long time and had yet to take the initiative to sit down. He only dared to run to the side and sit in front of Li Yuanqing after Li Yuanqing informed him. Moreover, he only sat on half of the chair and looked at Li Yuanqing very carefully. "Young master, I apologize to you." "What is it?" "I took the liberty of changing our name to Yuanqing Pavilion without your permission." Zhao Tian hurriedly explained. "There's a reason for this. This is because there were really many items being auctioned at that time. Many auction houses had earned a lot of benefits from it. Not only was it not worth it, but it was also very troublesome. In addition, the shop had indeed earned a lot of money. I thought that since I have so many security personnel, why not take the initiative to set up an auction house myself? So be it. Why change the name? The main thing is to make this auction house more famous. Although you're not around, our entire trading company belongs to you. We can't forget you, so we made this decision. Li Yuanqing did not care much about this matter and directly brushed it off. Forget it, forget it. There's no need to mention this matter anymore. Since it has already been changed, leave it be. Since I've already handed the management of the trading company to you, it means that I trust you very much. You don't have to ask me anymore in the future. Thank you, young master. Zhao Tian finally heaved a sigh of relief. In the beginning, he had wondered if Li Yuanqing would fly into a rage when he returned. He thought he would be furious. However, from the looks of it, Li Yuanqing was still very supportive of his work. He had not scolded him until now. This way, he was still very grateful. If not for young Master Li's kindness, he would not be where he was today. Just as Zhao Tian heaved a sigh of relief, Li Yuanqing suddenly took out a list and placed it in front of him. Help me take a look. Where can I find these materials? Zhao Tian took the list confidently. When he looked down, his face almost turned as black as the bottom of a pot. His expression was very conflicted. He put down the list again and looked up at Li Yuanqing. Young master, where did you see these materials? I've never heard of many of them, but I do know that 2 of them are traceable. We can think of a way to find them. It's fine. I'm not in a hurry. The materials on it are very important. Try your best to help me find their whereabouts. Even if you can't find them, it's fine as long as there are clues. Zhao Tian took a deep breath and carefully placed the list in his arms. Young master, don't worry. I believe there should be a way to find those 2 materials. However, I don't have any clues for the other 3. Perhaps I can release some clues to take a look. If someone can provide clues, I can also provide them with some rewards. I'll leave these to you. If you can gather all these materials, I'll give you a Dharma artifact. Every treasure in Li Yuanqing's hands was a top-notch treasure. How could the Dharma artifacts that Li Yuanqing had promised to give out be bad? Thank you, young master. Don't worry, even if I have to risk my life, I will gather all these things. There's no need to risk your life, but you still have to pay more attention. 3,000 miles away from Ping City, in a dark forest, Li Yuanqing's figure flashed past. Zhao Tian had already tried his best. Moreover, with his status in Ping City, it was not difficult to find any materials. However, the things on the list given by Li Yuanqing were too difficult to find. There were still 3 materials that had no exact whereabouts so far. He only had a rough location. These 3 materials were the Dragon Origin Crystal, the 3 Bluegrasses, and the Netherworld Flower. The living habits of these 3 materials were very unique. If one wanted to obtain them, they often needed to take a huge risk. Of course, there were, benefits if there were risks. However, these 3 materials were only available in the Forbidden Area. The reason why they were called the Forbidden Area was because they were not strong enough to reach it. One of them was this Black Wind Canyon. Li Yuanqing passed through a forest and arrived at a towering mountain. The path went all the way up to the peak of the mountain. The wind on the mountain was so strong that his clothes swayed. The left and right sides were empty. There was only the towering mountain peak. Looking down from here, everything was dark and cold. A long and narrow crack under his feet was covered by the mountain. The top of the mountain formed a protruding angle that blocked the entrance to the canyon. Only after reaching it could he see it clearly. Li Yuanqing looked down at the cold wind in the canyon. The wind in the canyon was very strong. It was said that even spirit transformation realm experts would find it difficult to move half a step down. If they insisted on going down, they would only be covered in injuries. Li Yuanqing took out a short black rod from his pocket. This rod did not have much luster, and it did not look like a rare item. He casually threw the short rod down. At first, the sound of the short rod falling could be heard, followed by the sound of the short rod colliding with the dark wind. The short rod was like a small toy that was constantly blown up by the violent wind. When it landed less than 10 meters away, it could not fall any further. Instead, it went back and forth. In a moment of carelessness, Li Yuanqing's black Dharma artifact had completely turned into powder and was blown away. Although this short rod was not of high grade, the materials used were relatively solid. The materials were still very special. It was not so easily destroyed usually, but now, it was easily blown apart by these black gales. The power of these gales was obvious. Li Yuanqing had another understanding of the name of Black Wind Canyon. However, this was the place with the highest chance of finding the dragon origin crystal. Zhao Tian found a lot of information before finally finding this place. It was mainly because the energy in the Black Wind Canyon was quite complicated. Li Yuanqing had originally come here to test the waters and see what this place was like. If he could really find the dragon origin crystal, it would not be too late to go down and find it. From the looks of it, the possibility of finding rare treasures below was not small. It was worth a trip, but this black wind was rather strange. He had to tread carefully. It would not be worth it if he was accidentally killed by this small black wind. Li Yuanqing took out a small shield and gently threw it into the air. The round shield expanded in the wind and became more than 100 feet long. He jumped onto the shield and a black shield extended from it. As time passed, it kept becoming corporeal until it was as dense as a physical body, protecting him in the middle. After protecting himself, Li Yuanqing slowly drove the small shield down. Although he did not know what was under the Black Wind Canyon, he could feel that he would not be disappointed. He landed on a small path at the side of the Black Wind Canyon. Along the way, he gained a lot of knowledge. Most importantly, he looked at the platforms on both sides of the cliff. It could be considered to have answered a question in his heart. When he threw the short rod down just now, it did not take long for it to be blown into powder. However, the powder landed somewhere. They were not blown up, nor could they fall. Where would they land? But now he knew very well that there were many gaps on both sides of the cliff. Those gaps seemed to have been blown out by the irregular wind. Many things had landed, and most of them were covered in thick dust. There were even some shapes that could barely be recognized as human skeletons. However, these bodies were covered by the powder that had been ground up by the latecomers. It was not that clear, but some of it could be seen. These were probably the exploration team members who had arrived here to explore over the years. This place had always been an unexplored virgin land. If they could excavate the treasures here, the benefits they could obtain would be endless. Driven by this huge benefit, many people naturally came to this place. Of course, no one could walk out. However, this was also the reason why the name of Black Wind Canyon could spread far and wide. Li Yuanqing was falling when he suddenly felt that the wind under his feet seemed to have become stronger. It could not be said that the force had increased, but the wind that was originally blowing horizontally had unknowingly turned into a strong wind blowing upwards. He felt a very huge force lifting him up from under his feet, as if it wanted to drag him outside. It was as if the canyon hated such an outsider. Li Yuanqing did not know the situation below. He temporarily used the wind to land on a platform at the side and observed carefully. It turned out that the wind in the Black Wind Canyon did not seem to have any special pattern like before. However, every once in a while, the wind inside would change direction. The canyon was east-west. It was very long and narrow, and it was also very deep. Generally speaking, the two winds seemed to be coming from below and from the east. Although they were constantly changing back and forth, in summary, only the wind in these two directions was stronger, like the mainstream. The rest were side currents formed by collision. The east was pitch black and nothing could be seen clearly. However, the wind kept howling angrily in the canyon, as if a huge beast was eyeing him from afar. Moreover, there was a tunnel extending into the canyon on this platform. It seemed like someone had dug in from outside and wanted to reach the canyon from here. Li Yuanqing had a lot of such information in his hands. Zhao Tian had gathered almost all the information from the expedition teams. There were many passages of various sizes. Back then, they thought that the violent wind would only appear on the surface. It would be much better and definitely safer when they reached the bottom. Therefore, they thought of these methods and dug many passageways. However, the deeper they went, the harder the stone was. After reaching a certain critical point, they could no longer dig. Therefore, most of these passageways were at the top. They had such thoughts because they could not even break through the wind on the surface. Later on, Everyone realized that the Black Wind Canyon was being blown by the wind from top to bottom. The further down they went, the stronger the wind was, making them feel so powerless. Li Yuanqing watched as the wind outside gradually weakened. Just as he was about to continue downwards, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Congratulations on signing in successfully at the Black Wind Canyon. Reward received. Reward 1. Cotton armor. Reward 2. Crystal powder. Hearing these 2 rewards, Li Yuanqing's eyes flashed. This crystal powder was good stuff. If it was attached to an equipment, it could increase the defense of the equipment by 20 to 30%. Moreover, it only needed a thin layer. There's no need to consume much to automatically form a powerful protective membrane. Not only could this protective membrane make the weapon sharper, but it could also make the defense stronger. It was a versatile item. However, there were too few such good things in the market, so there were very few of them. In addition, the value of this thing was too high. In fact, these Dharma artifacts did not even seem to match it. Its value was more expensive than most Dharma artifacts. Who would be willing to use such precious things to nourish their Dharma artifacts? As for the cotton armor, it sounded strange. He did not know what use it had. Although Li Yuanqing really wanted to choose the crystal powder directly, he felt that the first reward should be useful, so he hesitated. After a moment, he finally gritted his teeth and made a decision. I'll choose the cotton armor. Reward issued. A thin vest had appeared in Li Yuanqing's hand. This vest looked very ordinary, just white. There was nothing special about it. It was just a simple vest that looked a little simple. However, if one looked carefully, they would be able to discover that there were some dense and small patterns on it. If one did not look carefully, it would be difficult to notice these patterns. Li Yuanqing muttered in his heart, worried that he had chosen wrongly this time. But he had already made such a choice. It was too late to regret it now. He should put it on and try it out to see what effect it would have. Li Yuanqing put on the vest. After the white vest stuck to Li Yuanqing's body, it seemed to have fused with his outer coat and stuck to his clothes. It actually disappeared without a trace. He clicked his tongue in wonder as he looked down. It turned out that this thing was quite interesting. However, if it was only this much ability, it seemed like it would be a loss to give up the crystal powder and choose it. At this moment, the wind outside suddenly changed drastically. Every time the wind changed, there would be 1 or 2 very violent winds that acted as vanguard for the winds behind it. This time, the wind from the east to the west rushed towards Li Yuanqing. Li Yuanqing was caught off guard. Although he would not be severely injured if he was hit like this, he would probably not feel good. Just as he was about to defend, he felt his body suddenly become very warm. This warm feeling was very strange. He looked down and saw that a light shield had taken the initiative to rise on his body. This light shield was very low-key. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to see it. It was as if there was a weak light like a firefly flickering on Li Yuanqing's upper body, enveloping his entire body. Li Yuanqing did not know what use this weak light had. The violent wind that assaulted his face seemed to have ignored him and circled around him. He clearly felt that the violent wind was whistling in his ears, but it was so quiet around him. The violent wind beside him had clearly struck the rock wall and brought down a thick layer of sand. However, he did not do anything. It was as if he had fused into the violent winds. He seemed to have become transparent and was completely unaffected by the black wind. He walked out of the platform very leisurely. He looked down at the faint light that lit up on his body. He did not expect this cotton armor to have such benefits. No wonder such a strange thing was set as a reward. It turned out to have such a magical effect. Li Yuanqing did not know if this armor had any other uses, but now was not the time to think too much about it. Since this had saved so much trouble for him, he naturally had to go down and find the materials he needed. If he could not find the Dragon Origin crystal here, he would probably have to go to a few more places. At that time, it would be troublesome. He took a deep breath and jumped straight into the deepest part of the canyon. Like a bullet, he cut through the violent wind and pierced the endless darkness. Such a guest had arrived at the sparsely populated Black Wind Canyon. However, this guest did not look friendly. Li Yuanqing fell all the way to a depth of 10,000 feet before he could finally vaguely see the bottom of the Black Wind Canyon. The bottom looked very blurry and could not be seen clearly. He slowed down and slowly landed. Finally, carefully, he landed on the hard rock pile. These stones were abnormally solid from the black wind. After all these years, the stones left behind were all as hard as iron. These stones could even be used as materials for refining weapons. They were all very precious items. However, Li Yuanqing was not too interested in such things. There were very few people down in the canyon, let alone any creatures. It was quiet down here and there was nothing. It was a desolate scene. Other than these black rocks, there was nothing left. Water and plants were even more out of the question. They did not exist here. Moreover, even though the wind at the bottom was slightly weaker, it was still very stressful. Li Yuanqing did not feel anything with such a shield around him, but he could feel that the wind had indeed weakened a little compared to above. He seemed to have landed in a quiet area. The wind here was not strong. Li Yuanqing followed the direction of the wind and searched forward. He felt that he would definitely be able to find the dragon origin crystal he needed if he found the place where the wind came from. Sometimes the wind came from below, sometimes from the east. Li Yuanqing headed east from the bottom of the canyon, feeling the gradually strengthening wind. After walking for about 10 miles, there was suddenly a moment of silence. The wind beside Li Yuanqing suddenly stopped. This stopped for only an instant. Then, a very violent wind blew over from the east. This time, the wind was even stronger than before. The wind roared and blew past Li Yuanqing. He realized that there was clearly a light ahead. It was pitch black everywhere under the canyon. He could not see anything, not even a little light. Now that there was suddenly a trace of light in front of him, it was naturally extremely dazzling. He continued forward in the direction of the light. Not long after, he arrived at a very deep pit. This was indeed a deep pit. At the bottom of the pit was a very wide hole that connected to an unknown direction, and all this wind was blowing in from the hole below. This huge pit was like a sealed bag. There was a constant black wind whistling from inside, and it was coming and going. Sometimes, a strong wind would suddenly blow towards the east, and sometimes it would blow towards the top. This direction was strange. It was these two violent winds that kept colliding with each other in the canyon, making the wind direction in the canyon very unpredictable. Continue reading on MYB0XN0VEL. The huge bag opened its mouth and kept emitting violent winds at a very stable frequency. Even though it was very powerful, Li Yuanqing could not feel anything at all. He did not find anything valuable at the bottom of the canyon. Many places in the pocket lit up with specks of light. If one took a closer look, they would see that there were crystals embedded in the wall of the pocket. There was a lot of energy in this crystal, but it was not the dragon origin crystal that Li Yuanqing was looking for. Li Yuanqing ran to the wall and picked up a crystal. He placed it at the entrance of the cave. The light of the crystal was slightly dimmer. This was the light he had seen outside. However, it did not seem to have any special value in his hand. The main thing was that the power at the exit was not that pure, so its value was not especially high. Of course, if it was only used to refine beginner-level Dharma artifacts, it should be enough. Although the power inside these crystals was very chaotic, the requirements for beginner-level Dharma artifacts were still relatively low. These were enough. Li Yuanqing slid all the way into the huge wind pocket. This place was like a very big slide. He did not even have to use any strength or do anything to go down the huge pocket. However, without the protection of this armor, he would probably not be able to slide away no matter what. He would definitely be blown into pieces by the violent wind. After sliding for an unknown period of time, it seemed like a long time had passed. The light inside was constantly becoming stronger, and the power of the crystals on the passageway outside was constantly becoming pure. In the end, he finally stopped at a platform. It was only a small edge that a person could stand on. If he went down further, he would see that it was clearly a pure black liquid. These black things were the liquid formed by the huge pressure of the crystal above. This magma was very hot and contained endless energy. Compared to the phosphorus mine, the power in this magma could only be used to refine tools. It was not much help to human cultivation, and the difficulty of mining was very high. If it did not form a stable crystal structure, humans would basically be unable to use it. Therefore, despite that there was endless magma rolling here, no one had the ability to pluck this huge treasure. Although Li Yuanqing was very careful just now, he still retained his vigilance this time. He did not slide straight down into the magma below. If he accidentally fell in, even with his cultivation, he would probably be skinned alive. The crystal magma was very unstable. From time to time, an incomparably huge bubble would roll out. The bubble that emerged was like a huge ball that pushed against the dome. Then, it exploded, scattering a very hot aura. Li Yuanqing finally knew why he felt the wind blowing out from inside become even hotter after he jumped down just now. It was until later on that it seemed like the wind had completely hit his face like magma, and it was even hotter here. Coincidentally, a new gust of wind formed here. From the vent, it spewed out. It was supported by endless crystal energy. In a colder place, it formed the crystals attached to the wall. It turned out that this crystal stone lava was the reason why the Black Wind Canyon was formed. Moreover, it was also the reason why the wind in the Black Wind Canyon was so sharp. It was because a small portion of the energy had leaked out, even though most of the energy of the crystals had been absorbed. It was like thousands of thin knives scraping on a person's body, wanting to tear them into pieces. Seeing that the wind was about to hit him, Li Yuanqing did not dare to be careless. He dodged to the side and attached himself to the nearby wall. A shield slowly formed. The azure shield emitted a faint vapor, protecting Li Yuanqing in the middle. There were many huge crystals hundreds of feet long on the dome. They emitted an unparalleled light that illuminated the large area of magma below. In this place, there were countless bubbles constantly spitting out on the surface of the magma. Not long after, a bubble would be spat out, forming a violent wind with a stable frequency. Li Yuanqing's gaze was completely attracted by the dome. The energy of these crystals was the first to spray on the dome, forming a large area of crystals. There were all kinds of crystals. It could even be said that rare items in the outside world were like cabbages here. They were very common and everywhere. As long as he took a small shovel and hammered it twice, he would be able to become rich. After Li Yuanqing familiarized himself with the pattern of these things gushing out, he began to search around the dome. Black mountain crystal, broken jade crystal, stone platform crystal. These kinds of crystals were placed here normally. He would become rich if he took these crystals out to refine tools and dharma artifacts. Li Yuanqing searched the periphery for a long time. Although there were many types of crystals here, and many of them were rare items, he did not find the dragon origin crystal he needed. He had already circled around the outside. Although this place was big, with his speed, he quickly gathered everything. However, he could not find the dragon origin crystal at the periphery. He could only continue searching inside. Most of the bubbles were concentrated in the center. The center could be said to be very powerful. Basically, they were constantly spewing out crystal energy. If he wanted to reach the central area, he would have to let all the huge energy hit his body. It was a considerable risk. However, Li Yuanqing's motive for this trip was to find the dragon origin crystal. Seeing that he could not find it outside, he could only go inside. He slowly moved inside. This time, he rushed towards the deepest part of the crystal group. There was a large pile of crystals of all kinds gathered there. The crystals formed at the intersection of this huge power were the purest. They were of HGH purity and could be used directly. If merchants saw these treasures, they would probably want to dig them all up. However, Li Yuanqing did not do so. He picked up the portion that he felt he needed. He could not take everything here away. The closer he got to the middle, the faster the bubbles spewed out. Moreover, the power of the magma carried by them was even more turbulent. The azure shield wrapped around Li Yuanqing's body was worn down very quickly, and the spiritual energy in his body was consumed faster. Even with his strength, he could not last long at this level of consumption. He had to end the battle quickly. Li Yuanqing did not hesitate. After adjusting his position, he punched at the huge group of crystals and smashed them all down. Those crystals were originally forcefully embedded together, but now that they were smashed down by this punch, they shattered in all directions. However, Li Yuanqing only waved his hand and pulled them all over. In the next second, his entire body disappeared, and he appeared in the domain in the blink of an eye. He looked at the crystal mine that had piled up into a small mountain on the ground of his domain. Smoke was still rising from it, and it was about to ignite the grass below. Li Yuanqing waved his hand and summoned a huge lake of water from the lake. He poured it on the hot crystals and finally calmed them down. After the crystals stopped burning, their colors dimmed. It turned out that the ashes formed by the burns had covered their light. Li Yuanqing sorted these crystals into different categories. After searching for a long time, he finally found a very small pure white crystal surrounded by a huge crystal. This pure white crystal could be said to be very rare. The main reason was that these very pure crystals were usually transparent. It was difficult for white crystals like this to exist in these crystals. However, this was the dragon origin crystal that Li Yuanqing was looking for. Li Yuanqing revealed a satisfied expression as he held the not-so-big dragon origin crystal. The purity of this dragon origin crystal was still very high, and the overall energy was still very rich. It suited his requirements very well, and there was more than one piece here. In just a short while, he had found 6 to 7 dragon origin crystals. This was a priceless treasure outside. If he took one out, it would be enough to shock the entire Ping City, let alone such a huge pile. The conditions for the formation of dragon origin crystals were even more stringent than these high-level crystals. Such an extremely complicated piece of dragon origin crystal could only be born in an extremely pure environment. What he wanted was this mix. It was unique to be able to gather such a huge and complicated energy into such a small crystal. This dragon origin crystal was also the key to completely suppressing the devil crystal. Without it, the power of the devil crystal would be very unstable if it was completely released. After working for a long time, he finally found what he needed. Li Yuanqing heaved a sigh of relief. However, just as he was about to stop work, he saw an extraordinary item. A very ugly-looking stone was mixed in these crystals of different colors. Originally, it was not enough to attract attention, but it was really too unique. It was even stranger than the dragon origin crystal. This stone was gray and looked no different from an ordinary stone by the side of the road. However, with the strength of the energy inside, how could such an ordinary stone exist intact? Li Yuanqing held the small stone in his hand and could not feel any additional energy fluctuations. He squeezed hard, wanting to crush the stone. However, even with the huge strength in his hand, the gray stone was completely unscathed. This was a magical thing. With Li Yuanqing's strength, any stone in the world would shatter into powder if he pinched it, but this stone was still safe and sound. Li Yuanqing held the stone in his palm and sized it up for a long time, but he could not figure it out. However, since this stone had such power, it must have a powerful background. Moreover, it existed in such a place. The meaning was obvious. He put away the gray stone for the time being and came out of the domain. He appeared at the center of the lava and looked in. In the center of the lava, a huge bubble was slowly forming and was about to break. It was obvious that the large wind outside was caused by the huge bubbles in the center. The power was too great. Even with Li Yuanqing's strength, he did not dare to be careless. But there was such a powerful force contained in it. If he stood in the middle, would there be different crystals formed? These crystals were good materials for refining weapons. Now that the human race had a lot of things to do, it was time for them to need materials. If they could mine this crystal mine, it would undoubtedly be a huge increase in the strength of the entire human race. But even Li Yuanqing would have a hard time coming here. If he wanted the ordinary humans to enter and mine steadily for a long time, it seemed like he would have to spend some effort. At the very least, it would be very difficult now. Just as Li Yuanqing was conflicted, he suddenly seemed to see something familiar at the bottom of the crystal mine. There was a dark place below the hole that he had blasted out just now. The black stone did not look very conspicuous, but if one sensed carefully, the aura inside was a little familiar. He attached himself to the wall and took a piece from the black stone. He carefully observed it and pinched it hard. It was actually difficult to crush it. Moreover, this black stone seemed to have a very strange power that could block out one's divine sense. It was even difficult for spiritual energy to penetrate it at once. There was a very obvious resistance. This feeling was very familiar. Li Yuanqing kept feeling that he had seen this stone somewhere before. He took out a long black stone. This stone was completely black, and its overall color was pure. Its surface was very smooth. Other than the difference in detail, the two of them were identical in every other way. Moreover, their characteristics were so similar. It could block out one's divine sense, and its defense was astonishing. It could also gradually dilute spiritual energy. Only then did Li Yuanqing realize that the building materials of Black Stone Valley that he had been puzzled about came from this place. He originally thought that he had discovered this mineral vein by chance, but judging from the current situation, he was not the first to discover this place. At least 1,000 years ago, the humans here had already discovered this secret place and even mined the stones here to form their own solid fortress. How could Li Yuanqing not be shocked by this scene? However, if the human race had such strength back then, why were they defeated when they fought with the demons? How powerful were the demons then? Li Yuanqing took out a golden chisel. The chisel seemed to have gained consciousness as it nodded crazily on the stone wall like a small woodpecker. Every time it nodded, a square stone fell from it. While the stones that had fallen into the air were still falling, they suddenly disappeared, as if they had disappeared into thin air. If someone was in Li Yuanqing's domain now, they would discover that the disappearing stones had reappeared in Li Yuanqing's domain. They were piled up here one by one, and the scene was very spectacular. Continue reading on MYB0XN0VEL. During the excavation process, Li Yuanqing also discovered that these places were divided into levels. Not only were there black stones behind, but there were also many crystals mixed in. It looked like they were laid out layer by layer. This situation was really strange. He wondered how they were formed. Unknowingly, Li Yuanqing had already chiseled away a lot of these black stones. A semicircular gap dozens of meters in diameter appeared on them. In his domain, a small mountain made of black stones and crystals was piled up. It was a delightful sight. No wonder the humans at that time could have so many black stones to build such a fortress. If there was such a mineral vein, it would form an endless supply of rich energy here. All of this made sense. However, this made people feel even more emotional. Back then, the human race actually had such abundant resources. Compared to the dilapidated appearance now, it was really lamentable. In fact, those rebels even had to rely on obtaining forbidden energy from the demons to strengthen themselves. The humans 1,000 years ago would never have thought that their descendants would be in such a dilapidated state. It was a mystery. After excavating enough black stones, Li Yuanqing gradually approached the central area. This area was a place with very mixed energy. When he was outside, he did not feel this way. When he was close, he could feel the extremely mixed energy. Many completely different energies were mixed with each other. The degree of chaos was simply jaw-dropping. In fact, as long as those low-quality crystals crossed a certain boundary and landed inside, they would be shattered into pieces. It was as if they were crazily trampled on by an invisible hand. They were squeezed crazily and finally turned into powder that landed in the magma below. The crushed crystal powder returned to the magma and rolled and jumped. In the end, it was continuously purified and gathered to a member of the mixed army. It went on and on like a cycle. The rolling magma was like a ruthless purification machine. It purified everything that contained impurities and turned it into even purer energy. In the end, it turned into sparkling crystals that froze on the rock wall above. Li Yuanqing wrapped himself in a thick shield and slowly leaned towards the center. Just now, he thought that the middle was no different from the periphery, so he only moved around the periphery. However, after seeing the magical cycle inside, he became even more curious about the crystals formed inside. How huge were the crystals inside? As he pondered, Li Yuanqing unknowingly approached the inside. Until a moment later, a voice suddenly sounded in his heart. Congratulations for signing in to the Lava Devil Cave successfully. Reward received. Reward 1. Mordor Flower Seed. Reward 2. Obsidian Mother Stone. These two rewards were so unique that Li Yuanqing had never heard of them before. The Mordor Flower Seed and the Mother Stone of Obsidian? Li Yuanqing found it difficult to part with these two rewards. They sounded very powerful, but he felt that the mother stone of obsidian was more useful. If Li Yuanqing was not wrong, the black stone in his hand was the obsidian mentioned by the system. He did not know what kind of power the mother stone had. Although he really wanted to choose the mother stone of obsidian, he could vaguely hear another voice telling him, Mordor flower seed. Li Yuanqing seemed to have lost consciousness as he muttered to himself, Mordor flower seed. Reward issued. Received Mordor flower seed. The system's voice gradually weakened. Li Yuanqing came back to his senses and thought about what he had just experienced. Something seemed to have happened just now, but nothing seemed to have happened. What was going on? Could it be an abnormally strange dream? Or had he gone crazy from cultivating? Before Li Yuanqing could think carefully, a majestic energy came from under his feet. He looked down and saw a huge bubble that was 1,000 feet long had already gathered below. A huge bubble in the center attracted the nearby bubbles and gathered together, successfully forming this big fellow. The bubble twisted its body violently, as if it could not tolerate its current body. It kept struggling as if there was a huge wild beast locked inside. It roared and rushed left and right, wanting to escape such restraints. Li Yuanqing did not dare to be arrogant. He vaguely felt that there must be something under the central area where he was standing just now. What is the lava devil cave? He had too many doubts that no one could help him solve. However, he had to leave this cave for the time being. The cave seemed to have sensed that this outsider had stayed here for too long and wanted to chase him out. It kept releasing its majestic energy and tearing at Li Yuanqing's body, determined to chase him as far away as possible. Li Yuanqing's body flashed and disappeared from the cave. He instantly arrived at the periphery from the center. When he arrived, the huge bubble inside had already completely taken shape. The tall and big bubble was like a cover that covered the sky and sun, covering almost the entire pool of magma. Seeing that this violent wind was about to form and was about to blow out unscrupulously, Li Yuanqing could not stay here any longer. He immediately decided to turn around and leave. But there was a strong reluctance in his heart before he left. It was as if the voice that he had suddenly remembered was asking him to stay again. It wanted him to continue staying in the magma pool and search deeper to see what was under the magma. Although this voice was so urgent, Li Yuanqing had already gained a lot by arriving here. Not only did he find the dragon origin crystal he wanted, but he also obtained many unexpected surprises. This harvest made him satisfied. As for the other things, they were not that important. A red vine stretched out from Li Yuanqing's shoulder and slowly spread up. The red vine seemed to be reluctant to part with something in the cave. Li Yuanqing did not have the time to care about what he was thinking. He was focused on escaping. If he was any later, the violent wind would catch up. The originally shocking Black Wind Canyon was now in turmoil. The demons and humans within a radius of hundreds of miles all looked over in shock. They had never seen such a ferocious day in the Black Wind Canyon. This huge energy seemed to want to tear the entire sky apart. Even from 100 miles away, they could feel the pressure from it. Behind Li Yuanqing, who was in the middle of this energy, was Crazy Flames. He tore through the sky like a swan and rushed out of the Black Wind Canyon. The entire Black Wind Canyon, which was already roaring with anger, kept trembling. The intense vibration pulled the entire world along with it. An extremely strong wind that was rarely seen in 100 years instantly swept through the entire canyon. In almost an instant, it filled all the space in the canyon. That energy immediately expanded the width of Black Wind Canyon. After the culprit, Li Yuanqing, lured the violent wind out, he panicked and fled far away. After escaping more than 10 miles away, he looked back and saw that the sky behind him was completely covered by dark clouds. Moreover, the dark clouds had actually formed a vortex in the center of the Black Wind Canyon and was constantly expanding. Violent roars kept spreading out from the canyon like a sleeping beast waking up to vent its dissatisfaction. Li Yuanqing looked at the furious sky with lingering fear. If he had run a little later and been caught by the black sandstorm behind him, he might not have been able to escape. He had really attracted a lot of trouble this time, but he had gained so much. This trip to the Black Wind Canyon was more successful than he had imagined. He did not expect that there would be such a rich resource in the catacombs. Li Yuanqing thought that the resources in the catacombs had already been completely occupied by the demons. However, he only saw today that there were still many good things down there. It was just that these places were very dangerous. Even with his current strength, he had to take such a huge risk, let alone those little demons. The commotion caused by the Black Wind Canyon attracted many humans and demons over. They all saw an opportunity. Generally speaking, violent changes were the signal that a natural treasure was about to descend. Have you heard? The Black Wind Canyon in the west has been in the limelight recently. I heard that there are good treasures inside. Don't listen to those people's nonsense. There's nothing inside to begin with. I think someone is probably spreading some rumors or traps there again. Those demons are guarding outside covetously. If you dare to walk around casually, I'm afraid your corpse will be gone. What knowledge? A rogue cultivator who came in from outside said disdainfully, "That day, I saw with my own eyes the dark clouds above the Black Wind Canyon. The sound of thunder was deafening. This is clearly the news of a great treasure's arrival. However, almost half of it was snatched away by someone. Therefore, none of the people there benefited. Instead, they lost many people." "So you went that day?" someone asked. That person held the gourd and took a sip of the spirit herb juice inside. "I didn't go." "Then what are you saying? You make it sound like it's true. You sounded so serious just now that we thought you were there. In the end, you didn't even go. Why are you wasting everyone's time?" "That's right. People from outside like to brag. They can't change this bad habit." After he replied, before he could continue, the people beside him started mocking him. The itinerant cultivator from outside continued to say to everyone, however, "Although I wasn't there that day, a good friend of mine who had known me for many years was there. Guess what happened?" "What about it? What else could it be? I've already made it clear just now. He ended up with nothing left of him. This is because he's always thinking about beautiful things, but in the end, he doesn't have that kind of strength. He's only going to be cannon fodder." After he finished speaking, everyone present sighed again. The few people who had been clamoring just now stopped talking. After all, if that was really the case, they would most likely die this time. Everyone was silent for a long time before someone who was unconvinced muttered stubbornly, "That's not necessarily the case. There is always good and bad luck in this world. Even though there are many people who die, there should be many people who have obtained benefits. Only then can we know the advantages." "That's true." They were discussing enthusiastically in the tea house and did not notice a silent young man in the corner. This young man only drank his tea with his head lowered, as if he was completely uninterested in what was happening in the outside world. No matter how others muttered and argued, only this young man still sat motionless in front of the window and silently looked out of the window at the endless black rain. "Shopkeeper." The young man greeted a passing shopkeeper on his back. "Fellow Taoist, what can I do for you?" The young man took out a very simple and old map and placed it in front of the shopkeeper. "I wonder if you know how to get to this place?" The shopkeeper took the map from him and took a careful look. Then, he looked up at the young man in front of him in confusion and asked, "Young man, why would you want to go to the 10,000-mile grassland for no reason? This place is not a good place to cultivate. I'm afraid you will turn into dust before you reach there." The young man smiled and replied casually, "It's just that my meridians were injured from recent cultivation, so I need the 3 blue grass to treat me. If I don't have it, I'm afraid I'll die soon. There's no use in keeping my life. I might as well take a walk on the grassland. I might be lucky." When the shopkeeper heard Li Yuanqing's reason, he immediately laughed out loud. "Young man, you're wrong to think that way. At least you still have a life here and can live freely. Although you might have injured your meridians and your cultivation in the future will be a huge problem, living is better than dying. Your soul might be destroyed. At that time, you won't be able to return no matter what." After the shopkeeper raised his voice, the people nearby noticed the commotion and turned to look over. They had not noticed that such a fellow was sitting here, but after hearing their conversation, they became curious. "Why are you going to the 10,000 miles grassland at such a young age? It's been many years since anyone went to the grassland." "That's right. In the past, the periphery of the grassland was considered a safe place. We could also find many treasures out of thin air. However, The danger level of the periphery has increased greatly now. There's nothing good to find at all. Who would be willing to run there and die after taking 2 steps? They were chatting enthusiastically and wanted to persuade Li Yuanqing not to go to that troublesome place. That place was too dangerous and was not a place for humans. However, Li Yuanqing was very stubborn. Moreover, his expression did not change after hearing so many disadvantages. Cultivators originally put life and death aside. If we can't find a breakthrough, what's the point of keeping our lives? We might as well find that opportunity in the path to immortality. I think it's quite good. Little brother, you're right. However, this journey is too dangerous. I'm afraid you won't be able to withstand it no matter what. I think it's better to forget about it. Give up this thought as soon as possible and go to Rong City or Ping City to seek help from 2 famous doctors. Perhaps your illness can still be treated. However, someone stood up and said, I say, shopkeeper, since this little brother is not afraid of death and wants to go, it's fine for you to give him some pointers. Anyway, there are no secrets in that place. There's no need to hide it. Just let him judge for himself. The shopkeeper muttered in his heart when he heard this. He thought that this kid had no relationship with him. Since he was going to die, there was no need to stop him. In any case, that damn place was not a place for humans. If this kid died there, it had nothing to do with anyone. If you really want to go, it's fine to tell you. Thank you, shopkeeper. The shopkeeper hurriedly stopped Li Yuanqing. Don't be in a hurry to thank me. It's hard to say if it's good or bad to tell you this. Perhaps you'll lose your life for no reason and blame it on us before you die. We will be wrong then. Li Yuanqing smiled and did not argue too much with his words. He just listened quietly. The shopkeeper brewed his emotions for a moment and looked at Li Yuanqing very seriously. Young man, let me make it clear. That 10,000-mile grassland has been a forbidden land for thousands of years. Very few people who enter can survive. I'm sure you know your limits. The most unique thing about this 10,000 miles grassland is that it's not in a specific place, but there are many changes. It's very difficult for ordinary people to find this entrance. You have to have an extremely special method to find it. Li Yuanqing followed the clues of the 3 bluegrass north and arrived at this town. This town was very remote, and the living environment here was very harsh. There were very few resources, so there was a town that had been guarded by humans for a long time. Some time ago, the demons had set up sentries here and came to patrol. However, after such a thing happened in Ping City and Rong City, the young masters of the demons fled in all directions. This place became completely independent. The humans who lived here often ran to the nearby wilderness to find some materials, even though they were sparse. Originally, they had a natural hunting ground to go to. However, in recent years, the natural hunting environment has become increasingly harsh, making them have no resources to obtain. In the long run, their strength would become weaker and weaker, and they would no longer be able to compete. Just like that, the vicious cycle continued until now. And this 10,000-mile grassland that they used to rely on had now become a place they never mentioned. It was actually so magical. When Li Yuanqing heard the shopkeeper say this, he tried to ask, then how do I find the entrance to the 10,000-mile grassland? Before the shopkeeper could speak, someone beside him said, the point is not how you find the entrance, but how you can pass the test of the grassland. Those who can't pass the test can't enter. Li Yuanqing smiled and said very humbly, I'm not talented, but I have some confidence in this test. Heh, what an arrogant kid. The shopkeeper shook his head slightly and continued without looking at him. You just have to walk all the way north. Don't look back or look in any other direction. Just walk north. When the grassland finds you, it will naturally appear. That's simple. Li Yuanqing looked at the shopkeeper in confusion. At this moment, almost everyone's gaze shifted to Li Yuanqing. Kid, don't be too arrogant. This matter might not be as simple as you think. You have to know that many people will never see the appearance of the grassland in their lives. If you can't be chosen by the grassland, go back to where you came from obediently. Don't think about those good things. Through his conversation with these people, Li Yuanqing understood some of the problems with the grassland. It seemed like there was no big problem now. He placed a spirit stone on the table and left quietly. When someone looked over at the place where he had sat, they indeed saw the empty table. There was nothing on it, as if no one had ever existed here. It was as if the bragging just now was just air. Where is he? Where did he go? Where was that kid just now? Did he eat for free? He left just like that? Hurry up and find him. Such an arrogant kid. The shopkeeper hurriedly walked to the table and saw a spirit stone in the corner. He took a look and saw that the purity was actually a medium-grade spirit stone. One had to know that this meal was not even worth a low-grade spirit stone. But this young man had actually left behind a medium-grade spirit stone. The shopkeeper hurriedly stuffed the spirit stone into his sleeve to prevent others from seeing it. Everyone, disperse. Don't think too much. Perhaps this guest has his own way. Even if you really can't find him, he'll be back soon. It's not a big deal. I hope this brat dies on the grassland. He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Of course, Li Yuanqing did not know what the people behind him were talking about. He had already headed north on foot and did not stop for a moment. According to the shopkeeper's instructions, he hoped to reach the grassland as soon as possible at this speed. That 10,000 miles grassland seemed to be even more mysterious than what he had heard. The news he had received today was that that place was deserted and dangerous. However, from the looks of it, it seemed like it had been very difficult to take a step in for the past few years, let alone take something out. In that case, it seemed to be getting more and more dangerous. He could not be so relaxed on this trip. After walking dozens of miles away from the town, the wilderness outside gradually became desolate. The temperature here was very low. If people wanted to walk here, they had to wear a thick shield to protect themselves from the cold. Moreover, the further north he went, the faster the temperature dropped. It vaguely felt like it was isolating him from the northern region. Li Yuanqing strolled through the wilderness like a visitor from outer space. He did not belong to the northern region at all. As he walked, he suddenly felt that the scene around him had changed a little. However, on closer look, it didn't change. It slowly made him wary. Just now, there was clearly a trace of weak power that produced some indescribable changes. However, it was hidden very well, like a spiritual body that understood humans and was silently controlling all of this. Li Yuanqing pretended to move forward as if nothing had happened, but he was already on guard. He walked another 10 miles and suddenly turned around. This place was exactly the same as when he had just left. It was as if the 10 miles he had just walked were on the spot, and he had not moved. When he turned around and looked ahead, a large, lush grassland suddenly appeared in front of him. There were butterflies dancing among the flowers on the grassland. This scene was as beautiful as heaven in the catacombs. However, there was naturally danger in this beauty. This danger was quietly subdued, making one's mind numb and difficult to sense. After Li Yuanqing saw such a beautiful scene, he took a step forward without hesitation and stepped into the beautiful grassland.